If you are planning to learn programming in today's world, I think you are very fortunate, because with the latest developments in the AI, this has become much easier as compared to years ago. Just to give you a comparison, I started learning programming in the year 2005. Back then C++ was the most prevalent programming language, so I started learning that. But the problem with that language was that you have to install Visual Studio Code to be able to run it. The syntax for that language was very verbose, which means even if I have to print a single statement, I have to write like 10 lines of code. And there weren't many good learning resources out there. So I had to buy a hefty book which was written by Detail and Detail, try to learn just how I can write my first line of code. I still remember my first line of code was just to print a hello world statement, and when I hit the run button and compiled the code, I got 78 errors. And I was quite anxious that how come within this small code I have got so many errors. So I asked a friend to help me out. When he looked at the code, funny enough, I was just missing a single semicolon, and the program was giving me 78 errors of all sorts, which I couldn't figure out what it was saying. It was very difficult to self-debug the code back then. I feel like the people who are learning programming in this day and age are very fortunate. All the hurdles I have to go through back then are almost gone now. Now programming languages are much more easier. The syntax is very clean, very to the point, and almost feels like writing English language. You don't have to undergo installing some fancy compilers to run the code. You can just run it in your web browsers nowadays. And if the code fails for some reason, it gives you the specific line and the specific mistake you have made with the code. Very easy to self-debug the code nowadays. And especially with the new advancements in the AI, now it has become much easier. Having a tool like ChatGPT available, it's just like you have a personal tutor who's sitting right next to you and who can help you debug and answer all your questions and concerns as you are learning programming. And if you get stuck somewhere, it is right there to help you right there and then. The best part is that this tutor is available 24/7 to everyone and doesn't cost a dime. So in this video, I want to share with you that if I have to start learning programming today, then how would I use these latest advancements in the AI to effectively learn the programming in the shortest amount of time. But before we go into that, I wanted to explain to you the two different approaches of learning programming. There is one conventional approach, which is that you go through all the tools and all the commands of a programming language. You try to understand how they work and you keep memorizing them one after another. And then at the end, you build a project to see that how all those commands club together to create a beautiful project. The other approach is that of project-based learning, where you not only learn something, but you build along the way. And I like this approach very much because it not only helps you learn different commands, but it also helps you understand why you are using those commands when you're using them. One of the reasons people used to prefer the conventional approach over this project-based learning approach was that this project-based learning approach requires a lot of attention from a guide as you are building these different projects when you do not have enough knowledge. But the good thing is that now we have this ChatGPT tool available, which can help you unstuck whenever we get stuck. So for the purposes of this video, we'll see that how you can learn Python programming using ChatGPT. And if you want to learn any other programming language, that is totally up to you. The steps remain the same. The reason I picked Python programming is that it is one of the most in-demand programming languages out there. And also it is one of the easiest one to learn. The first thing you have to do is you have to go to the ChatGPT website. You can log in with your Gmail account. It is free and easily accessible. Now, once you are in the tool, the first question we are going to ask ChatGPT is, what are the top most frequently used foundational Python commands, so that it can list it out and you can familiarize yourself with those basic commands. So I'm going to ask this question using this prompt to the ChatGPT and see not only ChatGPT is giving me these commands, it is also giving me some description of how these commands are used. So spend some time understanding and going through all these commands so that when you see these commands in the code, it makes some sense to you. The next step is that we are going to ask ChatGPT to give us 5 basic example programs which are written just using these 10 commands which we have familiarized ourselves in the previous step. So I'll ask this question using this specific prompt, and I've highlighted here that you only use the commands which you have shown before. Now again, spend some good time trying to go through this code, and also notice that I've asked it to also explain the code in the form of comments, so that when you're going through the code, you can also see the comments to understand that why it is writing that code. So now spend about 10 minutes going through each example code to see that how all the commands which you have seen in the previous step work together to build this beautiful working code examples. And if you have any ambiguity, you can ask ChatGPT that why you wrote this command in this particular code, and it will give you further clarification on why it wrote the code in that way. In this step, you don't have to 100% understand all the codes. The idea is that you familiarize yourself with different commands and what does the flow of different Python program look like. Once you have that basic understanding, it is good enough that you can move to the next step. So now in the next step, we are going to ask ChatGPT to give us some suggestions of beginner-friendly Python programs which do not require any external connection in the form of databases, APIs, or any UIs. You can see that it has given a good set of projects which are beginner friendly and you can build as your first portfolio project. You can pick any of these as your heart desires, but for the purposes of this video, let's pick the number guessing game and ask ChatGPT to list down all the steps which are needed to write this code without actually writing the code. And as you can see that it has given very detailed explanation. The next step is that you go through all these steps and then start writing the code. If you have a code editor of your choice, that's all good, you can use that. But I have a suggestion of this one very good beginner-friendly Python compiler. You can find it at pythontutor.com. And the thing I like the most about this compiler is that once you have the code written in it, you can ask it to visualize the code. And then it will run the code line by line for you, and you can visually see that how that code is running. And I think this visualization tool is very good for the beginners to see that how the compiler goes through line by line and execute the code. So my suggestion to you would be that you go through all the steps which ChatGPT has explained to you, which is needed to write this code, and you bring it here in the form of comments. And then for each of those components, you try to write the code for that component. Even if you have no clue on how to write that, give it a try. Try to spend about 5 minutes on each of those components trying to write the code. And even after 5 minutes you cannot write it, then go back to ChatGPT and ask it to write it for you. It will not only write the code for you, but also explain it. But it is very important that you try to spend 5 minutes trying to write the code yourself first before you ask ChatGPT for help. And the most beautiful part of ChatGPT is that if you run into any issues, for example, I've written the code here and I've intentionally missed a semicolon. Now I've copied this code from here and have brought it back into ChatGPT and asked it to fix the code. And it has very clearly pointed me that what was the error in the code, and it has fixed it for me. And once, with the help of ChatGPT and with a little bit of your intuition, once you have written the code for each of these components, hopefully you'll be able to run the entire program. And just like that, within a couple of hours, you'll be able to write your first Python program with having zero prior knowledge. And this same milestone, it used to take months when I was learning programming in 2005. So if you have come here, don't stop here. Ask ChatGPT on what are some other programs you can build, and also ask it to suggest the steps involved in building that program. And with the help of ChatGPT, try to build more and more programs. The challenge I would give to you is that try to have 50 programs which you have written with the help of ChatGPT. And once you have written the 50 projects, you can easily say that you know more Python programming than 90% of the population. Now, if you are really excited beyond that and want to learn about some more good Python resources, I've created a separate video for you. The link should be somewhere here. Please have a look. I'm pretty sure you'll like it. Thank you so much.